Hello. So it's late, but I've decided to start a reading vlog because I just finished The Artful Dodger, and it's a show on Hulu. And so, how do I even say this? The Artful Dodger was based on a Charles Dickens book, Oliver Twist. The Artful Dodger is Jack Dawkins, who is a side character in that book. I've never read that book, but Hulu made a TV show based on that, where basically Jack Dawson, when he was a kid, was one of the child thieves in Fagin's group in Oliver Twist, and the show surmises that at some point Jack was put in prison, escaped prison in London, in England, London, I think, East End, and was in the Navy for a while, ended up being trained as a surgeon in the Navy, and somehow got shipped to Australia, which was a prison colony at the time, and is now a surgeon there. And so at the beginning of the show, Fagin comes back, and it's like a whole thing about Fagin and Jack being reunited, but it's also a really big love story between the governor's daughter, Belle Fox, and Jack Dawson. And I love it. There's only one season, but I do believe that it has officially been renewed for season 2, coming out sometime early next year, I think. So I'm very excited about that. I don't know when it will be released. In fact, I can probably look it up, which I will do when I'm finished with this. But I was looking at books that have a similar premise, idea, and style of that. And I came across a Reddit thread that had a couple of recommendations. So one of them was Olivia Twist by Lorrie Langdon, which I believe is an Oliver Twist retelling, except for Oliver Twist was a little girl, actually, who was cosplaying as a boy or pretending to be a boy to get by. And the book is set in the future of that story, where she is now grown up, and Jack Dawson is pretending to be the nephew of this really wealthy woman to run a con, basically. I don't know that much else about it, but they should have a love story between Olivia Twist and Jack Dawson, which I'm excited to see. The other ones that I have are Between the Devil and Desire by Lorrie and Heath, Pippa and the Prince of Secrets by Grace Calloway, The Rogue of Fifth Avenue by Joanna Shupe, and Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas. These are all historical romances, and let me look them up and read you a little bit more about each one, because there were distinct reasons that they were picked to be comparisons to The Artful Dodger. So I've got them all pulled up so I can read you a little bit more about each one. But Between the Devil and Desire is actually pretty funny because the characters are Olivia and Jack again. And it says, the ladies of Taunton won't stop whispering about deliciously wicked Jack Dodger, a once thieving street urchin, now the wealthy owner of London's most exclusive gentleman's club. There's no pleasure he hasn't enjoyed, no debauchery the handsome scoundrel won't provide for the lords who flock to his house of carnal intrigue. And then London's most virtuous lady, honorable, uncorrupted, and all too human, Olivia, Duchess of Lovingdon, who would never associate with such a rogue. So when Jack is named sole heir to the Duke's personal possessions, the beautiful, well-bred lady is outraged. Now Olivia is forced to share her beloved home with this despicable man. I'm really excited. And then it says, but Olivia's icy disdain is no match for Jack's dangerous charm. His touch awakens desire, his kiss demands surrender. She will struggle to bar Jack from her heart, but her body, coveting divine release, will not let her bar him from her bed. So we'll see how this goes. I have not read any historical romances, I don't think. So I'm interested to see how this project will go for me. Just starting off the bat. But then we have Pippa and the Prince of Secrets, which is a widow gone wild. So apparently Pippa is a widowed Countess of Longmere, and she vows to never fall in love again. And then she decides to live life by her own rules, finding new purposes as an agent with Lady Charlotte Fane's investigative society. As Pippa embarks on a dangerous mission, she encounters a man from her past who reawakens her youthful dreams and ignites her deepest desires. And then he is described as a brute with a noble heart. After surviving brutal beginnings, Timothy Cullen has become the powerful leader of the Mudlarks, a gang of scavengers dealing in goods and information. Known as the Prince of Larks, Cullen is a feared and mythical figure in the London underworld, and he lives in the shadows, using his mystique to protect those under his care. Yet beneath his scarred facade beats a secret longing to be seen by the woman he has loved from afar since he was a lad. Also, I just realized I'm lying. I have read a historical romance. I read one in December and I loved it. So hopefully this goes well. Brought together by a deadly mystery, Pippa and Cull discover fiery passion and an all-consuming love. Again, I'm excited to read that one. Then we have The Rogue of Fifth Avenue. Again, he can solve any problem. In serving the wealthy power brokers of New York society, Frank Tripp has finally gained the respectability and security of his own upbringing lacked. There is no issue he cannot fix except for one, the beautiful and reckless daughter of an important client who doesn't seem to understand the word danger. So this one sounds really interesting because the heroine sounds a lot like the heroine in the show, Belle, because she is trying to get involved in these crimes and things that are happening around New York society, but she's a society woman, and so he kind of has to like step in and protect her and like show her the ropes, which again is very similar to how things go in The Artful Dodger, where Belle is like wanting to be a surgeon, but females aren't allowed to be surgeons, and so she like basically tricks him into teaching her how to be a surgeon, and that's sort of how things start for them. So I am excited about that one. Then Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas says, a prim, well-bred gentlewoman, Sarah Fielding is a writer who puts pen to paper to create dreams. But now curiosity is luring her from the shelter of her country cottage into the dangerous world of Derek Craven. Handsome, tough, and tenacious, and the most exciting man Sarah has ever met. So Derek rose from poverty again to become the wealthy lord. So a lot of these have the like street urchin, poor child trope, like orphan kid running amok, who makes the best of his situation. Through either trickery or through like coming into wealth somehow else, I guess we'll find out. But I figured the way I would do this sort of series where I'm reading all of these books that are supposed to be like The Artful Dodger, is that I'm going to read them, and then when I finish each one, I will give you a review of it, and I'm going to come up with a rating system that basically is like my rating of it, and then my rating of how similar it is to the show based on like several factors that I will have to come up with. But I'm thinking off the top of my head, I want it to be like tone, because the show is like, it has serious moments, but it's overall like a funny show. Like it's more humorous than it is like really serious, if that makes sense. So I want to like match the tonality of things. I also want to find which ones have the most similarities between the characters. I think it's just going to be fun because there are so many like really cute moments between the two of them where they're like snarking at each other, and I love that. So I want it to be more than just like he's a rogue and she's like a gentlewoman. I want it to be more about like their actual personalities outside of their station, but also it sounds like they all come from the same station, so the like dynamic will be similar, but that's another thing I want to look for. And then I want to sort of like test how like good the romantic aspects are. I know the last 4 that I talked about are all actual romances. I don't know if Olivia Twist is going to be like an on-page like romance, so that's the one that I think is going to be the most different from the rest of these that I'm talking about. But I'm really excited to read all of these, and I hope that you enjoy this video and are excited to hear about them. And then at the end, I will rank them from like not just my enjoyment, but like the ones that I think are the best recommendations for this TV show comparison for a book. And I'm doing this because I love the show so much, and I want to read things that are similar to this because it feels like the type of book that I would really like. So I'm excited. If you like this video while you watch it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And let's just see where this takes us. Hello, it is Monday, and I'm checking in right before I eat dinner because I wanted to let you know that I finished the first book in this challenge. So I read Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas, and I have decided my points system. So I'm basically going to rank these books on a scale of 1 to 5 for the similar tone to the show, the similar characters, so the hero and heroine, how similar they are to Jack and Belle in The Artful Dodger, the relationship similarities, and this is the like similarity in the tropes used. So Artful Dodger, I've decided, is kind of like unlikely friends turned lovers, or like it's not enemies to lovers because they're not enemies, but like they start off on the wrong foot and then swirl into friendship turned lovers. That's sort of how I'm characterizing this. I don't know if that's already a thing that's called something. You can let me know if you do know, but I don't know. Then I also have some bonus points. So bonus points are for a similar setting. So this is set, Artful Dodger is set in Australia in the 1850s, I guess. And it's got the characters working in like a doctor's office. And so similar things to that, I'm going to get bonus points for, and then bonus points are only worth 1 point. And I'm also doing certain tropes that happen in the show, like Jack is always sneaking into Belle's window because he can't come in through the front door because her family wouldn't approve of him stopping in at all hours of the night to ask her about different surgeries, things like that. I will award bonus points for. If I see any similarities like that in the books, I will get bonus points. I'm also going to be ranking them based on like spice level. And when I say spice, I'm ranking this also on a scale of 1 to 5. I don't mean like how many sex scenes there are, or how like spicy and exotic the sex scenes are. I'm talking about like the chemistry of the characters. So there doesn't even have to be anything on page for it to get a 5 out of 5. It's the similarities between the show and the book. And obviously the show doesn't really show anything, but the book can show something and still get a 5 out of 5 if it's like a similar vibe or something that I can imagine the characters from the show doing. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my brain. But for Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas, similar tone, I gave it a 2 out of 5. There's not enough humor in Dreaming of You, so I think I've talked about it, but I will give you a brief synopsis again. But it's about Derek, who is a like owner of a gambling den. He started out as like a ruffian as a child, and then he ended up licking boots until he made enough money and started this big gambling club. And now like aristocrats come to his club, and like it's all these like really fancy people. And Sarah is a novelist who is well known for a book that she published about a prostitute named Matilda. And now she's writing about a like ruffian who runs a gambling club. So basically Derek Craven. So she's trying to get into his club to observe things so that she has material for her novel. That's like what's going on. And then obviously they fall in love. I will say the biggest difference between the book and the show is that the book has a like extra love interest kind of for the hero. And so there's this woman, Joyce, who is a married woman who Derek has been conducting an affair with, and he cuts off the affair before the book starts, but she sends men after to mark his face. That's like the first thing that happens, so you know immediately. But that's like the biggest conflict in this book, whereas the biggest conflict in the relationship in the show is that they are from different stations in life. Belle and Jack are from completely different stations, so that was very different. But now that I've given you some background, similar tone, 2 out of 5, not enough humor in the book. I felt, personally for me, it just like didn't hit. I want more lines like,
I've come here to train.
Horses?
How dare you speak to me like that?
Oh, I do apologise. Sod off, me lady.
there's also a scene in the first episode when they first meet where he like is basically telling her off for trying to like help this boy who got run over by a cart.
You good? Need a carriage? Well, like this one.
Oh, would you like a lift?
And stuff like that. I wanted more of that. And there's not a lot of that, like banter in this. So for character similarities, I said Jack is a 2.5 out of 5 to Jack, or Derek is a 2.5 out of 5 to Jack, and Sarah is also a 2.5 out of 5 to Belle. I felt like they both had similarities. Like there were certain things that Derek did that I was like, okay, I could see Jack Dawkins doing this in the show. Like there are certain things that he says where he puts his foot in his mouth and he's like, no, wait. And then also with Sarah, there were certain things where she had certain like snippy lines, and she definitely had the like high aspirations, I guess, that Sarah had, but she didn't come from the same station that Sarah did. And so there was also none of the like tension between the families that there are in the show. So that was, you know, that's why that is like that. For relationship similarities, 2.5 out of 5. Again, not enough banter between the characters, not enough like, honestly, not enough slow burn, like not enough longing from a distance, and miscommunications, which I know people don't like miscommunication, but like I feel like it can work really well, and it did work really well in the show. But in the book, again, the biggest thing that the characters are trying to fight for their relationship is the existence of this other character, Joyce, and then also Sarah has this guy that she's been courting for 4 years, and so that's going on in the background as well. So that's what I gave for scores on that. Spice reading, I gave this a 2 out of 5. I didn't dislike the sex scenes, but there were a number of scenes where Sarah was like actually saying like, no, I'm not in the mood, no, I don't want to, whatever, and Derek was still like, oh, I know better than her, haha. And I think a lot of this is like, first of all, it's a historical romance novel, I get that, but also like it was written in the mid-90s, so I think that had something to do with it. I just think that era of historical romance is not really for me. I've only read 2 books, I think, that were written around that time, but I've liked the modern historical romance that I've read much more than I like any of the like historical books with a romance lean from like the 90s, if that makes sense. I don't know. That could just be a me thing, but personally, that was how I felt about that. And then I did not give this any extra bonus points. The total points that this earned was 11.5 out of 20. Feel free to check my math. I'm not a mathematician. So that's not terrible. It's not a terrible recommendation. And honestly, like, compared to like a random book off the street, I think this is like a pretty solid recommendation, but it's not quite what I'm looking for. So I'm hoping that one of the other books will deliver more what I'm like hoping to find out of this. And I gave this book a 3 out of 5. Like, I'm rating it a 3-star on Goodreads. I thought it was fine. It's not like a new favorite. Although I really liked Sarah as a character. She's not as much like Belle as I would like prefer. Like the relationship is mostly what like is not really like Belle and Jack, which is fine again, but this is a very particular project. That's why I'm doing it this way. I'm hoping this makes sense. But the next one I have started reading already is Pippa and the Prince of Secrets by Grace Calloway, and I'm already liking it a lot more. This came out in 2021. I also thought it was funny to mention a lot of these books are second books in a series. So the first one that I read, Dreaming of You, was a second book in like a Gambler series. And then this book is the second book in a series that is based on like, so it's like Charlie's Angels, but historical romance. So these girls, it's like women and girls in a like secret society where they solve mysteries and help other women. They're like detectives kind of, but there's the main woman in it is Charlie, and they are like the angels. So I thought that was funny. But I'm still reading that one, so I will not spoil too many of my thoughts here, but I'm like 40% of the way through it and I'm enjoying it. So that's where I'm at right now. And at the end of this video, again, I think I already mentioned this, but I'm going to rank them in the order of most to least like the show, and also most to least favorite for me personally. So yeah. So earlier today, this morning while I was getting ready, I finished Pippa and the Prince of Secrets by Grace Calloway, and I have my scores. I also have a correction for my score from yesterday. So I redid the math, and it's actually a total of 25 points. So Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas got 11.5 out of 25, not 11.5 out of 20. Sorry about that. Sorry. Okay. So for Pippa and the Prince of Secrets, similar tone, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. There were a lot of similarities I felt in the like silliness aspect, and the like lightheartedness, especially with the interactions with side characters in that book. So that's why the tone score improved. For character similarities, for Call to Jack, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I actually thought they were very similar heroes. They both had the like background of like former child thieves, obviously, because I think all of these sort of have that like the child thief who grows up into a gentleman type thing happening. But I did feel like, obviously he's not a surgeon, he's not a man of means or like at the top of his field that he's had to really like fight with. He is still involved in certain crimes, and he is the leader of a like group of children that he used to be a part of. That's what he's the Prince of Larks. They're called the Larks, and they seem to be like pickpocket thief type things, but also they do some sort of like vigilante work, which is why they're sort of interacting with the angels, as I mentioned, the female like secret society, Charlie's Angels-esque thing that's going on that the main female character Pippa is involved with. For Pippa to Belle, I gave her a 3 out of 5. I did think she was more similar to Belle than the last character that we looked at, Sarah, but she, again, is not like a woman of high esteem or like high means. She is a lady because she married someone who had a good amount of money, and that's like how she came into her title, and then he has died before the start of the book, so she's a widow, and that's how she has a lot of the freedoms that she ends up having. So she has more freedoms in this story than Belle ever had in the show. And then for relationship similarities, again, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was more similar than the last one, but again, I'm missing that like banter aspect that the show has so well. This one had more of that, but it didn't have enough of the banter for me, and it also was lacking in sort of the like will they, won't they can't be together type thing, which the show is very like prominent. It's very prominent in the show. No bonus points. There was no, I guess I could have given it a bonus point because there was sort of a like surgery scene, but they weren't the doctors, if that makes sense. So there's a couple of scenes where they are in like an infirmary with people, but they're not the surgeons, but that's the closest it came to a bonus point. So I'm not really giving it a bonus point for that, but I did think I'd mention it. Spice rating 3.5 out of 5. I could see in a lot of their scenes, it felt a similar like level of tension to the characters in the show. However, because she's a widow, she has a lot more freedom, again, than Belle had in the show, but also like she has a lot more sexual freedom, if that makes sense, because she has already been married. So like they have to continue their relationship in secret, but basically the way the world is set up is that I don't know how true this was for the time, but she was married, her husband has died, she's a widow, so now she can go places alone, which didn't happen in the show, but that also opens her up to a lot of opportunities to have like romantic interactions with Cull, is his name? His name is Timothy Culver, maybe? I think. Timothy Cullen? I can't remember. Sorry, but she calls him Cull. And then that is a total of 17 out of 25. And I did like this book more than I liked the first one. I will say I liked the first half more than I liked the end. I was sort of mad on the ending. It is a happily ever after because it is a romance, but just food for thought. I give it a 4 out of 5. And then now I'm reading Olivia Twist by Lorrie Langdon because I kind of wanted a break from the historical romances, and I have 2 more to read, so I felt like this was a good time to put in the one that is not just a romance, and it has been good so far. So I'm enjoying it. I will save my full thoughts for when I finish it. But yeah, I do think Pippa and the Prince of Secrets is more like the show than Dreaming of You was like the show. And again, a lot of it is like going on vibes and just like my feelings for the characters, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's where I'm at with this one. I will let you know when I finish Olivia Twist. I'm over halfway now, so I should be finished with it either tonight or tomorrow. I believe I have like 2 hours left of the audiobook on the speed that I listen to, just under. So hopefully I will be continuing in my progress. I am, however, about to film a sit-down video for this channel because I was hoping kind of ambitiously that this would go up in time to be my Thursday video this week, but it is not gonna happen that way. I don't think I will be able to read 3 more books between tonight and tomorrow, or 2.5 more books. So I've decided to sort of like slow my roll on that and just let this video go up when it goes up. But that doesn't mean I do have to film a video for tomorrow. So I don't know what I'm gonna film yet, but I will film something and you will have already seen it. But yeah, those are my thoughts for right now. Hello, I'm checking in because I finished Olivia Twist by Lorrie Langdon. Yes. And I have some thoughts. So this is, I think I mentioned, it's like a YA historical romance type thing. So there's not any like on-page smut in this book, and it is a direct retelling of Oliver Twist, but Oliver Twist is actually Olivia Twist. She was pretending to be a boy when she was a child, and it's following her. Like, I haven't read Oliver Twist, but from the retellings of it that I've read, I gather that there is a part in the story where Jack, who is the Artful Dodger, the Dodger, gets in trouble and arrested for stealing a pocket watch, and that seems to be like something that happens throughout. So this book is set like 8 years after that happened, but Olivia is who gets stuck with the pocket watch, but it helps her find her like real family, and she actually comes from a family of money or something. She was just born out of wedlock, so her uncle takes her in, and that's sort of where the story is. And she's 18 at the time. And then at some point in his childhood, Jack gets taken in by a wealthy woman after he steals from her, which again is very similar to the show, because in the show, he pickpockets someone and then they say, you'd make a good surgeon. So that's how he ends up in the surgery. He gets like, they help him escape prison, and then he ends up on a ship in the Navy being a surgeon. So I thought that was an interesting similarity. But I did really like this book. I gave it 4 stars. There were certain things about it that I didn't love, and a lot of it is the writing style. I don't know what about the writing wasn't fully working for me, but it was felt kind of clunky at times, and it just like, it felt like a very predictable story and a little cliche, if that makes sense. Which again, is not a bad thing. I had a great time reading this book, and I'm really glad that I read it for this project. And spoiler for the totals, it's actually the most similar to the show, I think, that I've read so far, just based on my own criteria. So for similar tone, I give it a 4 out of 5. This book had the banter that I was looking for, but again, like, not quite as funny as I wanted. Like, it had the characters going back and forth at each other and like jabbing at each other more so than the other books have had. And I like that. Like, I that's what I want. That's what I like about the show. I like their like back and forth. I like the way they both use their like social class against each other kind of in conversation. I just think it's very like fun to listen to and to watch the banter. So that was more so in this one than it has been in the others. So again, 4 out of 5 for similar. So again, 4 out of 5 for similar tone. For character similarities, I said Jack to Jack is a 5 out of 5. He is so similar to the Jack in the show. He's not exactly the same, right? So maybe he shouldn't be a 5 out of 5, but like, as far as what I was looking for, like the way that he banters, the way that he like describes his feelings when it's in his point of view and stuff like that, like I just really felt like that this is the kind of Jack character that I'm looking for. And for Belle, I gave her a 4 out of 5. I did think she was pretty similar to Belle. There were a couple of things that I feel like Belle in the show does that this Olivia didn't do. Obviously they have very different backgrounds. So Olivia Twist grew up on the street and then comes into money later in life, more similar to Jack than Belle in the show, who's a governor's daughter and she's always had money. There's also not the like internal strife with not knowing if the relationship will work. Olivia also really doesn't seem to have the same like ambition that Belle in the show has. So Belle in the show wants to become a surgeon, and she has reasons for wanting to do that, but like that's what she's always wanted to do. I feel like Olivia doesn't really have that same thing in the book. She's kind of just trying to sort out what like marriage will look like and how she wants to fit into society, which Belle does talk about in the show, but it's not quite to the same extent. So that's why she didn't fully get like matching scores. For the relationship similarities, I'm giving it, again, a 4 out of 5 because I feel like the relationships were really similar. The banter was really similar. There were certain things that happened in the like relationship timeline of the show that aren't really consistent with the book. Things that I was like looking for, I guess. Like they don't have the same issues with external forces. Again, the external forces come from Olivia being like sort of in a relationship with someone else when she's like meeting this guy. Also, there's not like as much of the like slow burn build as I was looking for, and the two main characters knew each other when they were children and then are like reuniting now, which again is different than the show, which isn't a bad thing. It's just a difference that like didn't quite give me the same vibe of the relationship that I got in the show. I hope I'm making sense with all of this. So I also did get bonus points though, because there is a scene where Jack sneaks into Olivia's bedroom window at night to talk to her, which happens in the show and is one of like my favorite things about the show. I like the like, he knows he won't be accepted in the front door, so he's like sneaking around the back trying to like get a word in. The other thing that like this gets bonus points for is that Jack is into gambling in this book, and that's what Jack in the show is doing to make money because surgeons don't make money, so he has to gamble for his money. So I thought that that was a really interesting tie-in. For spice rating, again, there is no on-page spice in this book, so I want to reiterate that my spice rating is not for like how spicy a book is. It's how I feel like the characters' chemistry compares to the characters' chemistry on the show. Hope that makes sense. Like the similarities there, and like if I feel like it's at a similar like vibe. I don't really know how else to explain it, because obviously like nothing is shown on the show. But anyways, I give this a 4 out of 5 because I really did feel like the pining felt very similar when reading it. Not exactly the same, and there were certain things that happened quicker in the book than they happened in the show, and then certain things that happened slower in the book than they happened in the show, like with the characters' chemistry and like being together and wanting to be together. But yes, 4 out of 5. I did think it was very similar. And then that gives it a total score of 23 out of 25, which is really good. Again, feel free to correct my math if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it's a 23 out of 25, which again is really good. And my total rating for this was a 4 out of 5 because I liked it. I did not love the book though, which I think is interesting. This is so similar to the show, but I would say this is a 5 out of 5 show for me. I love this show. But the book, this book was not quite it. I'm still hopeful that I will find it. But I also am a little, not concerned, but I know just for myself, like I don't tend to love historical romance apparently. And that's all that we have left. So the two that are left, we have The Rogue of Fifth Avenue by Joanna Shupe, which is finally the first book in a series. And this one is set in New York City. And then we have Between the Devil and Desire. I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but that will be the last book that I read. I'm partway through The Rogue of Fifth Avenue right now. I'll give you an update when I finish it, and we'll do the whole chart for it. And then I will give you my final ranking at the end of the video as promised. Hello, so I finished The Rogue of Fifth Avenue by Joanna Shupe, and I really had a great time with this one. This is my favorite one that I've read so far for this challenge. I will say I expected it to come out on top. I'll get through my ratings here in a second, but like I expected it to be higher up than it actually is because of how much I enjoyed it, but we'll get to that. So for similar tone, I did say 3 out of 5 for this one. The tone is not as like light and funny as the show is, but I didn't like hate that. Like it has a more serious undertone. So this one follows, what are the characters' names? Frank Tripp, who is a guy who grew up in like basically the slum part of New York City. And this is like turn of the century too. So it's a different era. If that makes sense. It's like when Newsies came out, this is around the same time as that. Hope that makes sense. But Frank Tripp is living now as an attorney. So he had like a mysterious benefactor type thing happen when he was a teenager and got sent to a boarding school away from his family. And then now he's back in New York City, and he's basically lied about his past and said that he belongs in the upper echelons of society when really he does not. And then the heroine is Marion, but they call her Mamie, which first of all, I hate that. But she is the daughter of like a really well-to-do businessman. So she does have the like similarities of like that aspect in the show. Belle is the governor's daughter. So she is not the governor's daughter, but she does have like a very like similar spot in society in that she is in the like upper tiers of society. But also she and her sisters are kind of like bad girls a little bit. So she's always, at the beginning of the book, they are in a gambling den where women aren't allowed, but they're like pickpocketing people in this gambling den. And it turns out she's doing like a Robin Hood thing where she will steal money from them in these gambling places and take it down to where Frank Tripp is actually from, in the like southern part of the city, I guess, where the poor people live, and she will give it, like disperse it among the people living in tenement housing. And that's how she meets this woman who ends up killing her husband in like self-defense and to defend herself and her children. And Mamie has to convince Tripp, Frank Tripp, to take the case because he's a lawyer, remember? So she's convincing him that he needs to defend this woman for her murder charges. And then they sort of fall in love from there. And it's definitely one of those things where like they don't necessarily start in with that in mind, kind of like the show. So I'm kind of going on like a tangent, I guess, but I wanted to explain to you what it was about. This book is so good. I really, really liked it. I had a great time reading it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. But similar tone, again, 3 out of 5. Not quite the level of humor. However, for character similarities, I also said that Frank is like a 4 out of 5 compared to Jack. I don't think he's exactly like Jack, but this Mamie character is the closest to being like Belle, because she like kind of has this naivete about her where she thinks that like everything will just work out fine. She's like a little naive, which Belle is in the show as well. And that really plays into her like privileged past and all of that stuff. So I gave her a 4.5 out of 5. For relationship similarities, again, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. I really do feel like this has the most similarities in how their like relationship goes. They definitely have the banter down. There is a like a whole thing where her parents like really frown on Tripp as a like match for her. Like they agree that he's a good guy, but like not good for her romantically, which I thought was really interesting, because he has a position in society where he can be like with the upper echelons of society, but he'll never quite be good enough for her. And that's funny because that's even before they know that he's actually from like nothing. Like he came from nothing. This is when they think that he's from like a wealthy family. So I thought that was really interesting. And then for spice reading, I did give it 5 out of 5 because this had the like pining quality that I feel like the show really has. And I like truly believed the characters were falling in love with each other, which I think is something that can sometimes not click fully for me when reading romances. Like that's something that I've noticed. Like I don't know that I have really like felt the like warm, bubbly, gushy feelings, but I did get them in this instance. So I was very happy with that. So let me calculate what that totals. Oh, and I forgot to mention there is a bonus point in this one. I thought about giving a bonus point for gambling because there is gambling involved in this, and that's again a big part of the show. But again, in this, Tripp does not gamble. It's the girls gambling, so I didn't really count it. But he does like sneak into her window at night to like be with her, which is again something that happens in the show. So I did give it an extra point for that. So that gives us a total of 21.5 out of 25, which if you'll recall, I believe the last one was a 23 out of 25. So this is not as similar, I guess, as Olivia Twist, which may or may not surprise you. I don't know. I'm kind of surprised because of how much I loved this book compared to the other ones. Like I know I gave several of the other ones 4 stars, but this one is like leaps and bounds above it. Also, I wanted to mention that most of these are like second books in a series. I believe all of them, except for Olivia Twist, were second books in a series, except for this one is the first book in a series. So that also could like play into why I liked it so much. And then now I'm reading the last one, which is Between the Devil and Desire, which is the second book in a series by Lorraine Heath. But again, romance series tend to be series of standalones, so I'm not that concerned about it, if that makes sense. we'll see how I feel about this one. I just started it while I was getting ready, so I'm not very far in at all, but hopefully I will be done with this vlog soon so this can go up this week. I filmed my TBR yesterday, so that will either go up on Monday or Thursday. I wanted it to go up Thursday, but I don't know if this vlog, it's Sunday right now, I don't know if this vlog is going to be ready to go up tomorrow, which was my original plan. So if it's not, no big deal. I have a video that can go up tomorrow, and then this will go up on Thursday. So either way, I will talk to you when I talk to you. Hello. So I am coming to you kind of late for me on a Wednesday night. It's like 9:30, but it's time for me to finish this vlog. So I have finished Between the Devil and Desire, and I will give you my scores, and then we will go through and do the ranking for this video. For this one, for similar tone, I gave it a 3 out of 5. Again, this book, it's another spin-off of Oliver Twist. I don't know if I've talked too much about what this one is about, but it follows Jack Dawkins, who has changed his name to Jack Dodger, and he is the Artful Dodger, which is very fun for me. But he, how do I even describe it? So he became the master of like a gambling den, and he was taken in by a guy who, like a gentleman, I don't know what the titles are, but he was taken in by someone with a title and given like another shot at life somewhere in his like early teen years, it seems. And then he became this like patron of this gambling den thing, this club, gentleman's club type deal. And that's where we're at. And at the beginning of the story, there's a woman named Olivia, again, I believe. Is that her name? Yes, Olivia. And she was married to this guy and had his heir, and then he was never really interested in being around her. He was much older than she was, and he dies before the book starts. And so she goes to his will reading, and Jack Dodger has also been invited to this will reading because he has become the guardian of her son. And she doesn't really know why this is, but they're the ones who have the love, like the romance between them. So, again, it's a spinoff of Oliver Twist because it's got the same pocket watch thing, but instead of a pocket watch this time, it's a locket, I guess, that is stolen, but it was also Jack's locket the whole time, and it's got a picture of his mom in it, and that's like really important to the story. So anyways, he's literally Jack. Fagin is a character in this one, which is fun, but he's like barely there. Like he's mentioned at one point, Jack goes to see him, and that's the whole thing. But there's also like children thieves are employed by this gambling club to keep them out of trouble because Jack was taken off the streets, and so he wants to take these other kids off the streets. And there's also like pedophilia in this book, not from Jack, but like he was a victim of it when he was a kid, and he thinks that the kids that are working in his den have been preyed upon for it. So that's like all the background knowledge that I feel like you need at this point. Jack is not reluctantly involved with any criminal activity. Like he's not being brought back into criminal stuff. So that's why for me, this was a 3 out of 5. Again, not as humorous as the show, unfortunately. So tone wise, it's not that similar. But 3 out of 5, it's not bad for tone for me personally. Character similarities. Jack, I'm giving a 5 out of 5. He is exactly like Jack in the Artful Dodger. He even has like the snark that Jack gives to Belle in the show, Jack in the book gives to Olivia, which I thought was great. And she also gives him some snark back. She's also obviously at a much higher station than him. She doesn't really understand why he's involved in her life. And they sort of like have come to an agreement, not like a fake dating agreement, but like he doesn't really want to be in charge of this estate or this kid. He just wants the house basically, and he wants her to remarry quickly so that he can be absolved of his duty as guardian. So that's like what's going on in the background there. For Olivia, I gave her a 4 out of 5 in comparison to Belle. She's a widow with a small child. I like half wrote notes for this. I don't know what I was doing, but it says Jack is and then nothing else. Anyways, I'm giving her a 4 out of 5 in comparison to Belle. Again, she's got some of the snark that Belle has. She has the station in life that Belle had, and she's just like, she doesn't really want to be like held down by another man is part of her like complications with Jack. That's like their disagreement and their bickering. But also, this goes into relationship similarities. I give this a 5 out of 5 because I do think like she's supposed to be in mourning, which is similar again to the Pippa book that we read. But she doesn't really like feel like she's in mourning, and her and Jack's relationship is very much like reluctant, and both of them are like, we can't really like, they don't think that they are going to be able to like get married. So it's just sort of like a thing of convenience. And it's sort of like the line in the show where the sister goes to Belle and is like, well, you guys could have a very like long unconsummated affair or whatever. That's sort of the vibe. And by unconsummated, I assume she means like you don't get married, but you get to like be together. That's how it sort of is in the show or in the book. So that's sort of what's happening here. So again, 5 out of 5. They have the banter that I love. They also have the difficulty of like getting married and having that be a realistic option for them. And there is some talk about like running away together to be together because they don't think society will allow them to marry, which again, similar to the show, very similar to the show. So I think if that's like the type of thing you like, this is a really, really good one for that. And then again, for bonus points, there were lines in this book that were so similar to lines in the show. So there's a line where Jack basically tells Olivia in the book, like, hey, the world is not going to allow us to be, like, the world does not want us to get married. Like, our society will not allow that. And there's a line in the show where Jack tells Belle, like, the world will never allow us to marry. And so I thought that was very similar, gave it a +1 for that. And then also, at one point, Jack is, like, confessing his love to her, kind of, and he does say, like, you've done these things to me, like, you've hurt my heart, and you've, like, made me feel a certain way, and then he says, damn you, which is something that happens again in the show. So I thought that was really fun. So plus another point for that. And then for spice rating, I gave it again a 5 out of 5. I really, really felt like these scenes, not necessarily that they were like so similar to the scene between Jack and Belle in the show, but like it feels like it could have happened between Jack and Belle in the show, if that makes sense. And the vibes were there. So that's why I got a 5 out of 5 for spice. Also, I really enjoyed the like level of spice. It's definitely not closed door, but it's not like, there are certain words in sex scenes in books that I don't really like to read. Like it makes me feel like so cringy, and maybe I'm just rude, I don't know, but this book I felt like did a good job of not using the things that I don't like. I won't elaborate. So, but that does bring this book's score to a total of 23 out of 25, which is tied with the other one. So that's that. I did end up giving this 5 out of 5 stars for me. I loved this book. I thought it was so good. I even liked this more than the last book that we read, or that I read, that I really, really enjoyed, which was something of The Rogue of Fifth Avenue. Yes. I loved that book as well. Those were my 2 favorite books that I read in this whole vlog. And they were honestly the 2 that I was most looking forward to. And they were the 2 that I had to go to Everend to get a copy of because my library had holds out the wazoo. So I listened to all of these books on audio. I think I've already mentioned that. And I think I already also mentioned that the first book that I read's audiobook narrator, I didn't really enjoy. So I think I would have liked that book more had I read it physically. But I don't know that it necessarily would have been more like the book than the score that I ultimately gave it. Or more like the show than I ultimately gave it. I hope that makes sense. So I will say at the end of this book, there was a twist that I like was predicting, but also still kind of like made me feel weird. If you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about, I think. So I don't know, but there's that. But the ultimate, like, in order from most similar to the show to least similar to the show. This is not, again, in the order that I enjoyed them. I think still the most similar to the show is Olivia Twist by Lorrie Langdon, which again is a retelling of Oliver Twist, so it's not that surprising. Second most similar is the one that I just talked about, Between the Devil and Desire. I really thought that those tied in my total score. I just think that if you aren't really like married to the idea of it being super smutty romance, not even super smutty, but like having any smut, I think that Olivia Twist will scratch that itch. If you wanted more smut, Between the Devil and Desire is definitely the way to go. The next most similar is going to be The Rogue of Fifth Avenue, which is the one that's set in New York City. That one, again, I just feel like the vibes between the couple were more similar to the vibes of Jack and Belle in the show. Then next we have Pippa and the Prince of Secrets by Grace Calloway. And then least similar, we have Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas, which again was the original Gambling Den one. So I hope that makes sense. But that's my final rating for this project. I had a really good time doing this. I've been not slumping necessarily, but like my reading has not been up to par the way that I want it to be. So I hope that you like this project as well. I am planning on doing more vlogs kind of like this, where I watch a show and then obsess about that show and then read books that remind me of that show. Technically, this is kind of the second book in the series of videos, but the first one I put in my like book versus adaptation review because it was based on books. I didn't read Oliver Twist for this. You can let me know if you think that's a mistake. I don't know that that's something I really care to read at this point, although I will say my favorite classic of all time was A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. And again, Oliver Twist is another Charles Dickens. I have Hard Times on my shelves that I would like to read by Charles Dickens. And I know Oliver Twist is by Charles Dickens, so at some point I would like to read that as well. But that was the other thing I was going to mention. Between the Devil and Desire had like a really fun reference to Charles Dickens, where Jack Dodger is reading Oliver Twist to the son of the widow that he's wooing, Olivia's son. Is his name Henry? I can't remember what his name is. But I had a really good time filming this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see more videos from me, you can go ahead and subscribe. If you have any recommendations of shows that you think I should find read-alikes to, you can leave them in the comments down below, and I will try my best to get to that. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!
Might I suggest you find your spine? It's usually around the back. But don't take a man who can't read.
I can read. I can read. Just not very well.
Anyway, enjoy the evening.